Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I got...
evidence.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I got the cheese grater looking arm right now.
Wow.
But, yeah, so it was the box is deeper than I thought.
Uh-huh.
So I'd dive down, fumble around a little bit, and then kind of get my hand in the hole. I'm like, okay, nothing there, just like we thought. There wasn't going to be anything here. And I moved maybe an additional 3.5 inches, and then wham! And, I mean, violent. Like, I was not prepared for the violence.
Yeah.
And that thing smashed my arm.
The award-winning Tennessee WildCast is on the air with the latest on hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife watching, and all things outdoors. Make welcome your host, drummer and outdoor expert novice, Jason Harmon.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee WildCast. I'm excited about today's show. More than ever, we've got a special guest with us today, and it's going to be a fun show. Mr. Don King's helping co-host.
Yes, sir, Jason. Thanks for inviting me and especially having Cal here.
Yeah, Cal from MeatEater. Ryan Callaghan is our guest today, and it's going to be a fun show. Cal, thanks for being here.
Oh,
Hey,
man.
thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
He's been in Tennessee for a few days, and we're going to catch up on all that, but it's just a pleasure to have you, and excited about what we're going to talk about today. So remember, if you're tuning in on the radio, go watch this show, because it's cool to see this show. It's not cool to see us, it's just cool to see what's going on in the room.
And you'll notice an extra camera in the room this time, too.
Yeah.
So we've got Jason working on some footage for who knows where this footage will end up, you know.
Can you believe you might see WildCast on MeatEater?
Oh, man. Wouldn't that be something?
That'd be cool. So anyway, Ryan Callaghan is one of the co-hosts on MeatEater and the Director of Conservation. Tell us what the Director of Conservation is for MeatEater.
Yeah, it's a heck of a title, but I mean the neat thing is it's the dream job, right? Like I've always been very conservation oriented. I think like most folks, long before I even knew what the word conservation really meant. Mm-hmm. And now it's my job, so I get to work with a lot of nonprofit agencies, a lot of state agencies on both the good and the bad parts of managing wildlife and all the issues that trying to fix problems from DC down.
There's as many people management problems along with that, aren't there, as far as
you may as well just lump us in with the wildlife.
Yeah, right.
Yes, absolutely. But I mean that's really the gig. So on the one part of things, I can help work with nonprofit conservation-based agencies, work with them on messaging, get that out on a bigger platform, help tell the story well, and get it in front of folks that aren't going to necessarily be paying attention to like a hook and bullet conservation group, or folks that aren't necessarily going to be paying attention to a state agency that's associated with the hook and bullet crowd.
Gotcha.
Because we really have the ability to talk to folks that they like the idea of nature, they're just not interacting with it every day.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they don't even know that they like the idea of nature, but they like food. And we talk about food a lot, right? And so we have the ability to, talk to folks on a lot of different levels, and it always comes back to the outdoors, hunting, fishing, these conservation messages, how everything kind of ties together, how we're a piece of the puzzle, how funding's a piece of the puzzle, literally down to from, bumblebees, sometimes the lack thereof, all the way up to, your big charismatic megafauna like elk and your guys' giant non-typical state record whitetail out there. So, or world record, state record.
World record.
World record. It's pretty crazy that came out of Tennessee. And you talk about the funding, it's people love wildlife and like to watch it, and then they don't know how to help. There's ways out there to help. Just buy a hunting fishing license.
Yes.
But anyway,
buy a duck stamp.
Yeah.
Something easy. You can even mail something with it.
Yep.
There you
right?
go.
I mean,
so tell us about MeatEater. what's that show all about? Some folks may not know, and I want to hear it from you, and let the folks know what MeatEater is and how it came about.
Well, my good friend Steven Ranella started this show called MeatEater, and there's a big cast of characters, both primarily behind the scenes, that are involved in this project, and it's really just something that's taken off like wildfire. And it started with a show on the Travel Channel, and then it went to a show with the name MeatEater on the Sportsman's and Outdoor Network.
Okay.
And then Netflix picked it up, and then when Netflix picked it up, that really, just exposed that show to a huge audience.
New audience, I can imagine.
Predominantly a non-hunting audience.
Right.
And yeah, it's just like it's amazing. So I just came on full time with MeatEater in basically the first of the year, but I've been involved with it over the years, and it's just been like the best way to see it, because I was a little bit removed, kind of from the outside looking in.
Right.
I was working for a company at the time called First Light, and I was the director of conservation at First Light, clothing brand, and we have a very strong conservation ethos at that brand. And so kind of outside looking in, kind of from a sponsor perspective, watching that show grow, looking at who the audience was, and then jumping over and getting on the inside, really, and looking at it. And it's just, it's an incredibly powerful thing watching people interact with that brand, and that media voice
right.
is really, really positive and just incredible. And it's the broadest audience, most diverse audience I've ever seen in regards to something that showcases the outdoors.
Uh-huh.
It's
Right.
not your normal hunting show. I was watching a few episodes the other night, and it's fun to watch, and it's like you're right there in the hunt, and if you don't take an animal, I was watching the blacktail deer, and it took 3 days before you could even get one. I mean, you're right there with you, and the hard times, you're part of the hard times, part of the fun times, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, and it turns out most folks, it takes them more than 22 minutes to kill something.
Definitely.
So
It takes me a whole year sometimes.
yeah, yes, exactly. So, but what's neat about that show is the way Steve presents things.
Mm-hmm.
It really appeals to a couple of things that everybody loves. And I got stopped in a restaurant in Denver this winter, and this guy's like, "Hey, you're on that cooking show on Netflix." I was like, "Really?" And he grabbed his two buddies at the table, and he's like, "Hey, this is that guy on that cooking show I was telling you about." And so, some people are watching it, and they're like, "Yeah, this is a strange cooking show, but I really like it."
Yeah.
Right? And some folks it's a hunting show, and some folks think it's a survival show, and really the point of, the media group at this point, what MeatEater is connecting people to the outdoors, whether they're in it all the time or not.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of us don't get the opportunity to spend a ton of time outside, or sometimes are intimidated by spending a bunch of time outside.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great way to connect, and it's a great way to, be able to see a much larger picture than sometimes what outdoor media focuses on, which is just a big fish or a big deer.
Yeah.
This is
a better snapshot of the whole picture.
Yeah, what I really like about it is you guys tell the story and why you do it, and the ethic of it, and I've kind of put myself in the position of the viewer, looking in from the outside, especially if you hadn't had much experience outdoors, seeing it. All of a sudden, you're realizing, man, these guys are really. They believe, they've got a passion for what they're doing here, and I understand why. Whether they ever do it or not.
Good.
If you can relate to it and say, well, yeah, I can really see why that guy likes to do that. I think that's important, so important.
It is, and I'm so glad to hear you say that comes through, because, that is we were just crappie fishing out on. Oh my gosh, my brain's fried. We were crappie fishing here in Tennessee.
Kentucky Lake, maybe?
Out on Kentucky Lake, the giant lake, and an incredibly huge body of water.
It is. It is.
And,
But it's in Tennessee and it's Kentucky Lake, so that's
yes,
probably why.
that is. And Tony, the crappie fishing guru, this guy Tony Shepard, he was like, well, kind of asking me what I'd like about this stuff. And I said, really what I like is you get to watch these people have these aha moments of being like, when they get exposed to something and it clicks, and lots of first timers, and it's that educational aspect, and it's helping people. And it can be very simple questions, or it can be very complex questions. Like, you say you love grizzly bears, then why would you ever go out and try to kill one? Right. And working through, like, yeah, that I understand. I totally get it. But this is kind of the whole story, and it's really, really fulfilling. And if it weren't for that, I wouldn't deal with a bunch of cameras and stuff in the woods. It'd just be me in the woods, So, and then kind of the new venture for me is start a short weekly podcast.
Week in Review, Cal's Week in Review.
Cal's Week in Review. And, I like to hit a lot of fun, conservation-oriented news in a very short time, keep it digestible, and then... It's
fun.
Yeah, it's fun, and try to work on some bigger issues in there every week. And I think it's really important. And, the conservation thing, the whole director of conservation thing, it's kind of a scapegoat, right? Because this is all conservation. Yeah. So I get to work on a lot of wide range of topics and talk to a wide range of folks, and it's really fun. But I do, the point is to try to tie people back to the fact that, oh, yeah, you like clean water? You like clean air? You like eating fish? I mean, we were up at Buchanan Resort.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys ever been up there?
I have not.
All those hotel rooms, like, people have deep fat fryers that they brought with them outside their hotel room.
Only in Tennessee, right?
Like, they are there for the fish. They're having a great time. And, I want those people to also know that it's their fishing licenses that have created most of that stuff.
Right.
All those state accesses, all those boat ramps. It's way more because of the fishing license than because people want to be drug around on a tube or something like that.
Right.
And it's not something to be beaten over the head with, but it's something that people need to know.
It's a lot of the message that we try to put out all the time, week to week on this show especially. And but it's great to, and like you said, when it comes from a state agency, so to speak, it's, sometimes it can kind of tend to go in one ear and out the other. It's the government talking.
Absolutely.
But when you guys can chime in and say, hey, these guys are shooting straight with you here. This is where the money comes from, and this is why things get done.
Yeah, and man, being invited down here by Tennessee Wildlife Resource Foundation, they got the ball rolling on, because I spoke about Asian Carp on the show a few weeks ago, and they said, yeah, and if you want to talk about Asian Carp, you should come down. And it's been fascinating, and man, I can't tell you how much I love it talking through the issue with people that, they signed up to be biologists to work on game fish.
Right.
The fun stuff, smallmouth bass and largemouth bass and pike and crappie and walleye, and they're like, they are beyond knee deep in Asian carp.
Right.
And they're figuring it out, and it's their full-time job, and just incredible folks, and they're so invested.
Yeah.
It's not what they started out wanting to do, but they are so invested in this resource, and you can just see that passion. And public comments are on their mind. They have the public completely in mind, and they're working through the science.
Right.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, man. And that's the bummer about science and conservation, right? It's not instant gratification.
Right.
It's not. And yeah, I guess if you want some job security, you should find a job in conservation because
There you go.
you know, I mean, it's always a work in progress, and we're always learning a lot. And sometimes you got to make some mistakes to learn what that silver bullet is to fix some of these issues.
Right.
So
Looking 5 years down the road. That's why our strategic plans are every 5 years, you know. So
yeah.
sometimes that can feel kind of burdensome. But anyway, you got to plan ahead.
Oh,
Really do.
absolutely. And yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And yeah, man, if you like puzzles, that a giant body of water like that,
Yeah.
with the locks and the different ways of shipping, and I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of variables out there.
Yep.
Yeah, all the avenues that the Asian carp have a way to get in, you know.
Yeah.
So what all did you get into while you were out on Kentucky? Y'all went fishing and went to
Pretty
some-
much everything you can. As
Yeah.
far like we got incredibly lucky, and Johnny Allred with the foundation, he had really pulled out all the stops as far as like getting a hold of his old buddies that do this stuff all the time, and
Yeah.
they were happy enough and invested enough in the resource to drop what they were doing and help me out. And so we went bow fishing for carp, and that I've never done that. And man, there's no lack of targets out there.
Oh yeah.
And that was that was very fun. It was an interesting thing for me because, you know, where we are, it's like if you shoot something, you eat it.
Uh-huh.
That's all there is to it, right? And then you're working with invasives, and that's a little hard to wrap my head around. But then we started eating the carp too.
Uh-huh.
What'd you think?
Man, they're great. They're great. I mean, I didn't grow up filleting anything, and so the knife work, I'm not gonna lie at all. I need a lot of practice with, but that meat is like beautiful, translucent white. Like it could be on a sushi counter anywhere, and that was just amazing to see, and amazing to eat. We had a big fish fry last night, and we had carp, catfish, and crappie all side by side, and it was just really funny, right? You have like these highly revered species, game fish species, and then you have carp, which just the
Right
word
alongside
sounds
it.
terrible,
Yeah.
And it was great and fed everybody present, and
Good.
and it was awesome. You know, nobody turned up their nose at anything. So, and then went grabbing.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious because, you know, it was very much this. Well, you know, we have catfish boxes. We do that as well, but Damian Lovelace is the guy's name, and he's like, I got catfish boxes set up. It's the very end of the season. Probably not going to be anything in there, just because it's the end of the season. But if you want to try one, we can. And it was like this very nonchalant thing. And it was like, yeah, it's kind of crazy. Yeah. And I was like, well, yeah, it's hotter than hell. I'll jump in the water. And he's like, okay, well, again, probably ain't going to work out, but this is how it would if you did. And then, yeah, I mean, mentally not prepared at all.
So did it latch on?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got...
evidence.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I
Wow.
got the cheese grater looking arm right now.
You know, I think I saw that on your Instagram page.
Yeah.
You'd already posted that.
Definitely need
Yeah.
to watch this version if you're listening on
Yeah.
the radio. You got
Yeah.
to check this out. Wow.
But yeah, so it was, the box is deeper than I thought. So I dived down. Damien was right there, and kind of fumble around a little bit, and then kind of get my hand in the hole. I'm like, okay, nothing there, just like we thought. There wasn't going to be anything here. And then, you know, he's like, well, he said, like, get your arm all the way in the back just in case. And I moved maybe an additional 3.5 inches, and then wham! And I mean, violent. Like, I was not prepared for the violence.
Yeah.
And that thing smashed my arm. I mean, I full on, freaked out, like very serious fight or flight response, but I didn't pull my hand out. I just latched on.
Grabbed on.
And then my head kind of cleared. The cat twisted super hard and smashed my arm into the box. And then that was enough to kind of let the adrenaline clear a little bit. And then I pulled the thing out of there. And, big flathead catfish. I had no idea they even get that big, but they get a lot bigger than this one. It was probably like 27 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And just impressive, man. I mean, it's a very hard experience to describe.
I can't wait to see the video.
Welcome to Tennessee.
Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah, and then it didn't stop, and we went out and caught crappie, and we visited a North American caviar commercial.
Yeah.
Really a commercial fishing operation. And but they are commercial fish processing operation, and they were processing a bunch of carp. We hung out in the morning, watched a bunch of these commercial fishermen bringing in carp, got a chat with a bunch of those guys, which was really neat, and talking to them about how, you used to do commercial catfish with long lines, or, big, long trot lines. That is something, you guys can run a lot of hooks in this state.
Yeah.
And then, making that switch over to gill nets for the carp. And, those guys were really fired up about it. I was very surprised. Like, they're fishing, which is kind of an international language. And they were, it was really cool. It could have been talking to a gill netter for sockeye in Bristol Bay.
I'm sure they were prepping some of that stuff for lobster bait, weren't they?
Yeah.
Did
so
they talk about that?
The 5-6 pounders go to lobster bait. The next class up, that can be prepped for human consumption. They have an FDA facility right there. And we watched a guy running a real sharp fillet knife in there and prepping a bunch of carp fillets. And just very, very impressed how like clean white that carp is.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of mind blowing, right? Because you have this perception of carp, and I always grew up with it. Super warm water. They're bottom feeders. And the really interesting thing is it's a filter feeder. It eats the exact same thing from the time it's teeny tiny to the time it, could be 80, 90 pounds. And so a 90-pound fish tastes the same as a 3-pound fish.
Yeah.
And they were really excited over the big fish. Whereas with a lot of our other species, it's like, well, it'd be great to throw that one back. Those are the ones doing the real breeding. Let's keep the smaller ones. They taste better anyway, type of thing.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting to me, too.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time. I'm glad you came to Tennessee.
Incredible time.
And get to experience all that. And we got to get the word out. Let folks know about these problems we're having, and just spread the word like you're doing. So we appreciate that.
Oh man, yeah. There's problems out there for sure. But the crappie fishing was lights out. Never caught a crappie in my life. The finesse part of things is something I still need a lot of practice with. But those game fish are there. You gotta, you gotta be a fisherman.
Yeah.
You gotta fish. That carp is just another part of the variables a good fisherman deals with. Right. Could be weather, could be tides, could be whatever. And that's just kind of what the carp is. And those game fish are in there, and we were having an absolute blast, but yeah, there's no doubt that you can only have so much biomass in a lake, right? And they're not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
So it would be good to see them go away.
Yeah.
Well, before we run out of time, I want to hit on your story we heard earlier before we started rolling tape. But you said you got all kinds of audiences, non-hunters and kids and everybody. But a dad came up to you and said he found his kids cutting out cardboard
to be a policeman.
Box.
Yeah.
Policeman.
Yeah, I got a little startled in Dallas one day. This cop came up to me. My little sister's a cop, right? I'm not afraid of police at all.
What do you
It's just
do?
they're always a little stern when they first approach, and it kind of caught me off guard. And he's like, yeah, I wanted to tell you that I walked in the kitchen, and my two little kids, a boy and a girl, he's like, I thought they were playing with a cardboard box. And they explained to him that they were cutting up a deer. So the kids were pretending to cut up a deer, which was the cardboard box, and they had picked that up from watching the TV show.
Wow.
I think that's what's great about your show. I mean, like you said earlier, there's all kinds of parts. Some people think it's a cooking show. You've got cooking, survival. I mean, you're cooking over a little fire and a little pot. I mean, the deer tongue, the mule deer tongue y'all were eating in Idaho. I mean, it's like, that's awesome. And then, it's a hunting show as well. So it's got all those elements, and it attracts so many different audiences. And
it's accessible, right? It's 99% public land. We try to go really keep things to places people can go and access. Even with limited means, sometimes you got to save up for a little while. But, I always tell folks, I'm like, if I was willing to quit beer, there's no telling what I could save up for. So, it's all within reach, and yeah, man, being able to be a part of Steve's vision with the MeatEater TV show has been an absolute blast. And then, what we're doing down here for Cal's Weekend Review is an extension of that, and just an absolute blast as well. So
yeah. Well, tell us about one of your favorite hunts. What's one that tops the list?
Man,
or fishing trip, maybe crappie in Tennessee. No,
I just love being outside.
Yeah,
love being outside. I mean, give me a over-the-counter tag, as long as it's legal, and I got some time to do it. Mm-hmm. Anything with time, and I'll be out there. But I love taking first timers in the woods. I am probably incapable of squeezing the trigger if I'm around somebody who's never gotten something or typically has an unfilled tag in their pocket. Mm-hmm. So I'm always like maneuvering to get them lined up for a shot, and that's fulfilling. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And it's amazing to watch your show. Y'all got some cool stuff going on. We appreciate the conservation side of things and helping us get the word out.
Hey, I got one quick question,
Go ahead,
Jason.
Yeah.
Can we get just a real quick version of who introduced you to the outdoors? How'd you get excited about this?
Oh, man. I was just one of those strange kids that always wanted to be outside, and eventually you start annoying enough people, and they're going to pass you off to somebody who really likes to be outside too. So, yeah, I had a string of next-door neighbors when I was a little kid who put up with me. Some of them were just going off to college. They still made time for me, so that's a good lesson there. And then eventually my dad, his secretary, my dad made a lot of time too, and it just was not his forte, but he made the time, which is the biggest thing.
Good.
And eventually his secretary, her husband was an outfitter, and that turned into the first outfitter I ever worked for. But that man had the patience of Job, because as soon as I locked into him, I mean, I was skipping school to just stay there and ask him questions. So,
well, we appreciate you, Cal, being on, and make sure you check out Cal's Weekend Review podcast. Check out MeatEater, and thanks again. Appreciate you.
Hey, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Cal.
All right, we'll see y'all next time on Tennessee WildCast.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hey, it's all about Tennessee wildlife. It's what we do. Tennessee WildCast will be on the air again next week. We'll see you then.